All right, so Assassin's Creed Shadows. So recently I had the opportunity to jump in and try Assassin's Creed Shadows about 2 weeks ahead of launch. And while I have been having a pretty damn good time playing the game, I had a handful of thoughts I wanted to go over just to give you guys a better understanding of if Assassin's Creed Shadows is kind of worth your time. As of recording this video right now, I'm at about 45 hours, give or take. And looking at the remaining content that I have, which is a lot of side content, I'll probably be about 60 hours in by the time I finish up the game. Now, I do want to give Ubisoft a big shout out for giving me early access look of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Always nice when I get to play the game a little bit ahead of time and actually get a real good look of the game before making a review of that, so huge shout out to them. But admittedly, Ubisoft games have not been great for the most part. I think they've been good at best, average at best, if I'm being honest. But I will say though, snap reaction as of finishing the campaign right now and completely doing all the story content, I do feel like this is probably one of the better Ubisoft games I've seen in a while, and I think it's probably their best release in the last couple of years, which isn't necessarily the highest of bars, but still I do think it's pretty good. But I do have a handful of thoughts that I do want to go over in this video, so you guys maybe have a better understanding. So with all that out of the way, let's actually talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows so you guys have a better idea of the game. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to spoil, and I may change some things here and there just so it's not spoiling the story or anything. But for the most part, you play as Naoe as well as Yasuke. These are the two protagonists of the story, and due to events, you have to save the world. That's the thing I'm just making up for the sake of the video to not spoil. And so these two individuals cross paths and you basically team up. If you're familiar with the game Assassin's Creed Syndicate, then I believe it's very similar to that. You have two characters that you can opt to choose and use, and they work very different ways in how they essentially perform. Naoe, for example, is a character that's going to be more so of your traditional assassin. She's much faster in terms of mobility. She climbs way faster. She has tools like grappling hooks that Yasuke doesn't have available to him, and she's going to be the character that you utilize whenever you want to go and do the more assassination, stealth assassination type fights. And then you want to do infiltrations and think of the sort, you're going to probably pick Naoe. Now, she's not necessarily the best at fighting, but she can fight, and some of the builds I'll be putting out in the next couple of days actually does take advantage of that. But for the most part, Naoe is going to be a character that you use for the more dexterous, deflecting style of combat, and that's what she does. On the other hand, Yasuke, he's going to be more of your frontline brawling type character. He's going to be using like some of the bigger weapons. He's going to utilize more of the like range tools like muskets and bows and things like that, and he's more like military focused, if that makes sense, because you know he works with Oda Nobunaga. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's something that's been shown plenty of time in the footage. And he essentially is the character you're going to use to essentially hit the front lines. So sometimes in the game, and these are just some of the missions, you will have to play both of them or sometimes pick in between them, which is super nice. And he's typically the one that's going to charge the gates, since he has the ability to just like bulldoze things, and you know he's the big guy. And typically whenever it comes to those type of missions, Naoe, she will be someone that's in the back line, unlocking gates, assassinating the main target, taking out key targets, things like that. So they work in combination like that, though both of them bring something unique to the table that make them valuable, that will influence your decision. And most importantly, their combat styles are going to be different depending on how you play them. And so if you're someone who prefer that like frontlining play style, then someone like Yasuke is going to be much better than someone like Naoe. Now, that's not to say that Yasuke can't sneak, but he's slow, he's big, he's easier to notice, he doesn't climb as fast. You know, you can use him, and same for Naoe. It's not like she can't fight, but she's a little bit more fragile. She doesn't deal with heavy attacks as much. So, you know, that's a bit of a take and a give when it comes to those two individual characters. Now, when it comes to the gameplay loop, it's going to be your traditional Assassin's Creed gameplay loop. Again, I'm not going to talk about the story. I will say this without spoiling the story. The story is actually probably one of the better storylines I've seen in a Ubisoft game in a while. I think even for an Assassin's Creed game that I've personally seen. The last one I played was Valhalla, and then before that was like Black Flag or something. I'm not very like into Assassin's Creed, but the story, despite it being a story that's probably going to get a lot of like hate for, I thought it was actually pretty decent, and they actually told a really good narrative that kept me interested. And if you're a regular watcher of the channel, you know I don't really like stories or things like that. I typically skip them. Some of the stuff was actually really cool, and I think they did a really good job. So of course you have your main storyline that you're going to follow, and then there's the classic Assassin's Creed open world. I will say the open world is a massive map. I believe there is 7 massive continents that will have individual missions, castles, keeps, just different assortment of open world stuff. We'll go over a handful of those just so you guys understand it. So of course you have the standard, climbing up and looking around thing. I don't know if that's counted as a mini game, but you have that, so you can kind of see the area and understand what's going on in the world. So you can find locations and go to them. There's shrines. These shrines you pray to, and they will give you knowledge points. That one's pretty straightforward and easy. Sometimes enemies can be at those, so that's kind of where the challenge comes in. But there's that. Then there's these knowledge scrolls you will typically use Naoe for because she's better at climbing. You'll find the knowledge scrolls, they'll give you points and things of the sort. There's these other meditation locations that will do a admittedly pretty annoying mini game if I'm being honest, and then you will do some type of story mission of the past that is once again specific to Naoe. For Yasuke specifically, he has mini games that makes it so you can actually train his weapons, because he does use an assortment of different weapons just like Naoe does. He uses tools, he uses bows and things of the sort. And then there's archery, mini games, things like that. So overall, there's a lot of different mini games, there's a lot of different quests, and there's a lot of different assassination targets. And seeing that, the events of the world is happening, you will have a lot of individual factions. I'll just show a little bit on screen. There are a mountain of different factions that exist in the world that has unique enemies that have unique gear tied to them and unique stuff tied to them. But yeah, that's pretty much the gameplay loop. It's your standard Assassin's Creed gameplay loop, so you should be very familiar with it. When it comes to combat, I'm gonna mix this a little bit with skills. Combat is actually pretty nice. I've noticed from the last Assassin's Creed I played that they added a ton of different animations. They added a ton of kill animations. Some of them are pretty brutal. Typically Yusuke's kill animations are way more brutal. He cuts off heads, he beat them into the ground. He has some pretty brutal animations that I think are really, really cool. But yeah, they touched up on the animations as well as just the combat overall. There's way more things going on. There's a proper parry, evade, and multi-light hit deflect system that's going on that will make enemies vulnerable. There's just different interactions that work really well that makes the combat feel very fluid. When it comes to Naoe as well as Yasuke, they all have 6 individual trees. For example, Yasuke has long katana, he has a nagata, a kambodo, a tempo, which is basically a rifle. He has the samurai tree as well as the bow tree, and each of these individual skill trees will basically have different substats that you can level up to make the character feel pretty good, and as well as get unique abilities, which you can have 3 abilities all at one time, at any given time rather. So that's really, really nice. Personally, I found Yasuke playstyle to be way more my speed when it comes to it. When he plays, he's more of a guy who's just going to run everything down, and admittedly I do feel like he was a little bit stronger than Naoe. I say a little bit, but I think he's much stronger than Naoe is. But he has a good amount of versatility in the way he fights. He has a lot of lockdown. His HP is almost 3 times hers. He is relatively fast, not as fast as her, but he's pretty much unstoppable whenever you build him correctly. He has really good synergies with his gear that makes him more likely to stop big attacks, and he feels like someone that's just going to overpower most if not all enemies in the game. I have 2 builds that I'm playing right now. One is a parry focused build, which can parry pretty much every attack because they do unblockable spam a lot, so it felt really good to have that. And then on the other end, I play this full-fledged bow build that's actually really valuable. So the build versatility in the game is actually really nice, though I do think the bow build needs a lot of investment to actually go off the ground, but still you can actually make some pretty cool builds. On the other end, when you're playing Naoe, she's not my personal playstyle, but she is, again, as I said, way more dexterous and, going to be someone who tries to avoid combat more times than not and typically try to assassinate. Her skill trees include a katana, which is just a standard katana, you know what that is. She also has a kusarigama. This is a ball and scythe weapon that's pretty fast. Tanto, which is my primary weapon I use a lot, which is really dexterous and have some of the best skills in my opinion. She utilized tools, which I think you're going to have pretty much in every lineup, which uses kunai, ninja stars, bells, smoke bombs, and things of the sort. She has a shinobi tree, which is more focused on being a fighter, and then she has the assassin tree, which is pretty much passive focus that really makes it easier for you to assassinate, which I feel is going to be kind of mandatory with her tools. Now, I did want to touch on stealth because I do think that that's super important. That's something that should be in its own category. But I will say with Naoe, I do think she's not as strong as Yasuke, but I do think she has a lot of build viability. I wish she actually used a bow. That would be really nice. but she's definitely more of a like general assassin, stealth assassin, ninja kind of thing going with her. So you know, that's just kind of how she plays. Now, talking about stealth, I did want to say my impression of the stealth is a little bit mixed here and there. Whenever you're playing on normal difficulty, what you will find is when you're on top of roofs and things, even in broad daylight, things don't tend to see you. So that's kind of weird to me. I didn't really like that. But whenever you're playing on the highest of difficulty, they can see you, and it feels like they have like eagle eyes, if that makes sense. Darkness is actually a thing in the game. It actually does shroud you and make it harder for things to see you. On normal difficulty, you can easily just maneuver around the world, and the moment it's dark, it's really hard for anyone to see you. They're kind of stupid, but I mean, I think normal is the best way to play it. On expert, it feels a little bit unfair. I wish it was tuned a little bit better on normal. I wish they would see you on roofs if you're just standing there in the middle of the broad daylight, unlike what it is now. Or maybe even just tune down the expert, because like the moment you even come remotely close into possible view, even if they're not looking your way, it seems like they know you're there. So the stealth is okay. The tools on Naoe is a little weird as well too. Again, I do think the stealth is really good, especially like the kunai. The ninja stars are okay. The smoke bomb can be hit or miss, but I feel like specifically the smoke bomb is a little hit and miss, because sometimes it'll make it so the enemies like don't see you, and in a lot of cases they actually do see you. They really need to improve the smoke bomb quite a bit. That's something that's a little lacking in the stealth department. I'm putting that in the stealth department because that's kind of how she works, and you're probably going to use those. I also don't really like the way that the bell works. The AoE on the bell is not very good. I feel like I've not seen a use case of the bell at all in the game. Most of the time, double assassination has been like my bread and butter for most things. So I think they need to balance the stealth tools a little bit better. The assassination tree is amazing. I think the shinobi tree is really good, but for the most part, I think the tools are like a little hit and miss whenever it comes to like Naoe and her stealth, because you're going to be using your tools for stealth. That's just how it is. The kunai are exceptional. Like, they're super good. The ninja stars can be good, but for the most part, the kunai is just like the best part of her by a large margin. Stealth is okay. I think if you're someone who really likes stealth, you're gonna like it for the most part. You'll probably play it on normal, give or take. If you're looking for a challenge, probably play it on expert. But yeah, that's my opinion on the stealth. Moving on to a little bit more non-combat focusing, there is a hideout in the game. Yes, there's a full-fledged system where you can build up a base, and the general focus of this system is basically what you're trying to do is make a hideout for all the people, or all the different people who's rebelling to save the world. Again, I'm just making that up. That's not what the story is about. But as a baseline, you just use it to just give them a place to kind of stay. And these things are going to contribute to giving you scouts, which you're going to utilize in a variety of ways in the world and in the open world and just on your map. For example, you can use your scouts to kind of scout out things going on in the world, so you can find objectives and key things happening, or you can use those same scouts to, whenever you go to like a mission or something, a place, a castle, whatever you storm, to steal resources at the end of the season. There's a seasonal system, we'll go over that in a second. But yeah, that's basically what they're used for. As you continue to upgrade your base, you'll get more like scouts, you'll get more room for scouts, make them cheaper, make them do things better, things of the sort. You also have like a forge that you can upgrade so that you can craft weapons. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. There's some like decorative stuff too, of course, for those of you who want to actually decorate. I don't care about decoration, but you can do all that stuff. And then there's like collectibles, where you put all your collectibles and things of the sort. It's basically a full-fledged base system. From what I've heard of previous Assassin's Creed titles, this is probably the best hideout from what I've seen of it compared to like previous hideout systems. So I personally believe that you actually do need to put a good amount of effort into this to really get the most out of it, because you can actually use this system a little bit later to give yourself some pretty good money. Then of course, because you're gonna need money to like upgrade your gear and like slot in different engravings and stuff like that. So this system actually works really well, and once you actually do this really early and snowball it, it actually becomes a pretty cool system, and you get a lot of different decorations. So I do think that it has a little bit of something for everyone. It actually has progression as well as some cosmetic need to it. It's really cool. Now, I did say that there was a forge, so let's talk about the equipment as well as just like the forge system. We'll like mix those together. So for the equipment system, you will have different variety of legendary, epic, rare, and normal, I think it's called uncommon gear. Each of these will have a base affix, and then depending on the rarity of that said equipment, it will come with possibly another engraving slot for you to basically put a different affix in. You unlock these by simply basically buying the item or finding it, and then once you get legendary engravings, you can put those in those different slots as you upgrade your forge to level 3 to actually do that. Every single one of your slots could in theory have a legendary item, except for your horse slot obviously, and so you could make a pretty powerful build. As I said a couple of times in this video, I have a full-fledged glass cannon, which you can't be a glass cannon because Yasuke have a lot of HP, but glass cannon like archer build that make it so that I do a ton of damage but at the cost of a lot of my HP. And I just built around range, different like effects and things like that, and some of the engravings can actually morph the game into being really crazy, just like poison clouds, multiple shots on your arrows, just like really cool stuff like that. The forge is obviously important because you can upgrade your gear, which you're gonna use a combination of resources that you get from dismantling as well as just finding it in the open world, and then you can like add those engravings like I said, or you can just straight up sell it to the vendor, whichever one works for you. But the forge system and the like upgrading system alongside the equipment systems are going to be like kind of hand in hand. Again, I think that it actually has really good build diversity, and I was able to make a couple of builds that felt completely different from one another. So I think there's a lot there when it comes to customization compared to like previous Assassin's Creed titles. The last one I played, there's way more build diversity, so I'm a big fan of that. Now, one thing I actually almost never talk about in games being good, I want to talk about the performance. And in terms of performance, the game is actually pretty decent. I don't have any concerns. I don't feel like anyone's going to have any like performance issues. I use a system that in my opinion is like probably mid, getting closer to lower mid. I'm buying a new PC later this year in terms of like how good it is. And for the most part, unless I'm recording really heavy with OBS, which eat up a lot of my memory and stuff, I don't really get much of any stutters. Like only whenever I'm doing that do I get stutters. When I'm just playing naturally, not recording on I believe high graphics, it's pretty fine for the most part. When I'm recording, I have to drop it down to medium because it's just way too much on my system. But in terms of performance overall, I think it's been pretty solid. Keep in mind, I'm using a review copy, so for day one patch and things of the sort, I imagine it's going to make the quality a lot better. But in terms of my overall impressions, I could play on high with my potato PC for the most part, and I have very little to no stutter, so it's a really good, well-performing game in my opinion. I think in closing, I did want to talk about the difficulty, and then I'm going to just give you my negative because I did want to like be fair because there is some negatives that come with it. Difficulty wise, the game is relatively easy. I mean, it's an Assassin's Creed game. I don't think anyone comes into Assassin's Creed with the intention of it being a very difficult game. You're just here to play, have some fun, assassinate enemies. It is basically that. It's a very simple game that's not going to be that hard, that challenging. There are some moments that can be challenging, some of the fights, but if you're looking for a challenge, raise it up to expert. If you're playing on normal or journalist mode, it's going to be very, very easy to play. I don't dislike that. Not every game has to be the hardest game in the world. I think what it is fine. But yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty like 5 at best, maybe 4 in terms of challenge. It's an easy game. It's something to have fun with. You know, it is what it is. When it comes to like the overall time investment, as I said in the intro, I played about 45 hours as of now to complete the story. Some of that was me like cooking and like doing human stuff, but for the most part, it took me about 45 hours to get there. I did some of the side content in between because I just wanted to get stronger and get gear and loot and stuff like that. But by the time you probably finish the game, you'll probably get somewhere between 50 and 60 hours, depending on how hard you play. And this includes all the side content because there is a massive world with a ton of side content, so there's going to be a lot. For the most part, there's like a good amount of content. You're going to have a lot, so it's pretty decent. What I didn't like and some of the things that were super annoying, first off, the horse. God, the horse is so terrible to control. The moment you touch a pebble or touch a rock, it just flips out and just do a complete U-turn. This could be patched out in the like in future updates or something, hopefully. But the like navigation of the horse is probably one of the worst things I've seen in a video game. Personally, I opt to just actively just run around half the time because just going through the world on the horse alongside the other thing I'm going to talk about was just atrocious. When it comes to like the climbing and the parkour, because I think this is actually kind of important, and I wanted to say this specifically for the what I didn't like. The parkour is good in some areas and it's not good in other areas. What I mean by that is when you're like in the towns or you're in the cities or you're you're scaling towers and things of the sort, is really good. Like the verticality isn't that crazy in this game. A lot of times it's like, it's a land that's not necessarily has like towering buildings. Like only time you're doing that, like climbing up really high, is whenever you're assaulting keeps in the sort. So more times than not, you're not climbing as much. In those situations, it's fine. When you're playing Naoe, it's really good. When you're playing Yasuke, it's horrible. Like you don't want to climb with him. He's slow. You generally want to go through the castle and like climb up through like the different chutes and stuff. That way you can do it. But like when it comes to scaling buildings, it felt really bad to do it without Naoe. And the reason why I don't like this is specifically because whenever you're attacking keeps, the like samurai guys, the stronger elite units, in order to do that, to unlock the chest is typically in the castle, and the little bird's eye view thing that you can teleport to is at the top. So essentially you want to assault the castle with Yasuke, and by the time you do that, you kill everything, but then you have to leave the base because it's a dangerous area, swap to Naoe, everything respawn, and then you have to climb up to the top. You can do it with Yasuke, but it's going to be much slower to do it than just swapping off, and it just kind of kills the gameplay loop. I get what they're going for because they want to make Naoe be like that kind of person who just like kind of climbs and be the more assassin, but that kind of felt really wrong to me, and I felt like that was one of the lowlights. The other thing was the world itself. A lot of the game wants you to follow the path in most of the cases, so whenever you try to like cut through, you can't really climb. I felt like in previous Assassin's Creed titles, you could climb pretty much everything. Like that was like the major draw, you can climb everything. In this game, they put a bigger emphasis on you like sliding down things and not able to actually climb on walls as much as you used to. That actually rubbed me a little bit wrong. I know they're trying to lean a little bit more towards realism when it comes to the game, but for me, not being able to climb things like you used to, that rubbed me a little bit wrong. It's not a game breaker, but man, just going around the world constantly sliding whenever you're not following the direct path, that felt kind of like I don't like it. I guess the other thing personally for me was I felt Naoe was way weaker than Yasuke. I could have built her wrong, I don't think I did, but generally speaking, playing Naoe, you're going to play her very heavily early, and then you'll eventually get Yasuke from some of the story beats. And going from her to Yasuke felt like, what the hell, I'm just bullying them. He has like 3 times her HP, he's much more damage on his weapons. I don't know if he's overtuned or she's underpowered, but either way, I felt like I wanted to play Yasuke most of the time because it was just straight up easier. If you want that assassin playstyle, obviously you're going to kind of be forced to play her, but in the same vein, I did feel like she was a little underpowered, so I think she needed a little bit more adjustments on her number. To give you an example of how like egregiously strong he is compared to her, in the game, whenever you assault a camp or like a fort, they can sound the alarm, and this will summon like guardians and much stronger enemies. Like they're way stronger than the average character, and I would have her fully geared out and properly level to the gear that your character is, so you can upgrade your gear, like I said in the upgrade section. And I would go fight like just like 4 or 5 enemies, and it felt overwhelming. When I play on Yasuke with gear that was 10 levels lower, and he was 5 levels under the enemy, and I raised the difficulty to expert, and I had the alarm going off, only then was I able to barely die when I made a mistake. Like he feels so much more overtuned compared to her, and it's kind of egregious. Again, if you like his playstyle, you're gonna love him, but for the most part, she feels a little bit weak. Now, are all these things enough to make me not like the game? No, I still think it has a lot of value, but I do think those things need to be touched on. Yasuke is way too strong, I think. Overall, what are my closing thoughts on the game? I think the game is for players who like Assassin's Creed. If you like open world games, if you like stealth games, if you like fighting, things of the sort, you're gonna like it. It's not the most challenging game in the world, but it is a traditional Assassin's Creed game. It has a really solid story, tons of open world content, and for the most part, amount of content that you get for the price, I do personally think is worth it. If I had to give it like a star rating, probably give it like a 6.5 to 7, which is good for the most part. It's just the AI is not the greatest, the stealth could be better, and just the things we talked about, the open world navigation parts wasn't the greatest, but overall, like for an Assassin's Creed fan, you're probably gonna enjoy it. If you like Assassin's Creed games, you're gonna like it a lot more. Mirage I kind of skipped because they didn't have a lot of content. This one is jam-packed with a lot of content, and the content is, while it can be like busy work, it actually contributes to making your character powerful. overall, that's pretty much my review on Assassin's Creed Shadows. Hopefully that gave you a better idea if you want to play it. I will have a giveaway going, I believe, for Assassin's Creed Shadows, so make sure you check that out down in the description for those of you who want to possibly get a copy for free. And yeah, leave me a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We have a plethora of videos coming on the channel in the next coming days. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.